Welcome to the Power of Connection and Biz show. I'm Kimberly Lay, your leadership development consultant, employee engagement partner, and your host. Today, we've got an exciting show. We're going to talk about leading and managing in a state of flux. Our guest today is well accomplished. She's a professional certified coach. She's won numerous awards from UCI Irvine's Mirage School of Business from a teaching perspective. She has a master's degree from Columbia University in psychology, and she's currently working on her doctorate from USC in organizational leadership. Wonderful. She's also CEO of Ncline Leadership. Please welcome our guest, Sue Padernacht. Sue, it's so great to have you on the show.
Thanks, Kimberly. It's great to be here with you.
Wonderful. So as we love to get into it, kind of just jump into the heart of the story and the meat of it all, right? So can you just elaborate, just as a coach and working with various leaders and managers during this really profound, volatile time, what is coming across to you? What are you seeing from a reaction from leaders and managers? What are their biggest needs right now?
Sure. Thanks, Kimberly, and good to be with everybody. So in speaking with you, the leader, your workforce is looking to you for stability, reason, agility, expertise, solutions. What they really want from you: heroism, magic, parenting, therapy, fortune telling. So how's that going? So that's what I'm seeing. So leading today and leading in a state of flux is really uncharted territory, and it's not for the faint of heart. So the workplace is no longer what it was, and it's not yet where the destination is. So it's as if we're in the middle of a long, dark tunnel. We can't see the light at the end of it. We hope it's closer than it seems, but in the meantime, leaders are fumbling to find their way out without causing too much damage or upsetting too many people along the way. So Kimberly, what I'm finding is that leaders are feeling squeezed on all sides from all stakeholders, whether it's family members, customers, employees, management. There are competing and ever widening wish lists between the business and employees. So of course the business wants to be done with this, right? To be recovered, to drive performance, drive strategy, have a future that's predictable, strong productivity, leaders who lead, right? Good reputation. What do employees want? What's the first word that comes to mind? Stability, security, safety. They want managers who care about them. They want clarity. They want an investment in their growth. They want to feel connected, kind of like what this great show is about, connected to purpose and to meaning. So you've got this ever widening wish list. So what does it mean to be leading in a state of flux? So there's kind of two critical things to do. One is, where is your culture? And how do you lead from where your culture is now to where your culture needs to be? So those are some of the things that I'm seeing right now. So I'm happy to elaborate on those two, but that's kind of a good thumbnail summary of what I'm seeing right now.
Yeah, it's a great start. I have to kind of chuckle because you mentioned in the beginning, they also possibly have to be a therapist, right? And it's during this whole profound volatility that's been occurring and this whole change that many of the organizations and leaders had to kind of coach their team through and going into remote learning, right? And all of a sudden having a window into their personal lives because maybe they're feeling isolated or maybe they're having a hard time setting up the remote office or really finding a rhythm and work schedule because the dog's running across the room or the kids are on their lap. And so, as a leader, it's not just leading them through a basic project or, a sale or, a linear task. It's really having to be able to kind of reach in and connect with that employee, right, on a personal level to know that, I'm a safe place to land. I can help you through these challenges. even if some of them are personal as we're trying to do the professional work. Would you agree with that? And how have you coached leaders through that process?
100%. And, this is not what they teach in MBA school, right? So, even in our organizational behavior classes at UC Irvine, or in my org change classes at USC, we don't teach about connecting as much with the whole person as we do connecting with employees, right? In which we leave our personal lives, at the door, the literal door that we used to walk through when we went to the workplace. So truly in uncharted territory, the good news is that we can do this and we have the ability to do this. We just need to remember to bring our humanity. And so Kimberly, what I see a lot of out there is some confusion about this term out there. Have you ever heard of the term authentic leadership?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So the confusion and the mistake that people make is they're focusing on the authenticity and which seems to give permission to blurt whatever is at the top of our minds or what is in our hearts. That level of vulnerability is not only scary, but it's also not appropriate for the role, which is the role of leader. So when we think of authentic leadership, the great thing about it is trust is the most important thing that we need to build and rebuild, because that's what's really breaking down right now. On the other hand, we need to focus on what the role of leader is first, and then integrate authenticity and our humanity within the confines of the role of leader. So the example I like to give is anybody who has children or has raised children knows that you want to, be honest with them, but you don't want to, tell them everything, right? You don't want to scare them, right? So of course we're dealing with an adult to an adult, but employees are looking to us, right? For that stability, reason, agility, and they want fortune telling and heroism, all at the same time. So, we do need to kind of honor that we are in a role with the organization that is both empowered, but is also looked to, right, to provide that sense of that things are going to be okay. So kind of like to navigate, to steady the ship.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So, great point. Also, I want to get into, you mentioned this a couple times, trust, right? Building that trust with an employee. So are there some tips you coach leaders and managers in order to create more of a trusting environment or trusting relationship, especially in moving to a remote environment? How are you working with your leaders and managers to help them create that trusting environment that the employees are almost just, gripping onto, looking for that safe place to land, right?
So I love your question, because you talked a lot about a trusting environment. So it starts with understanding the environment, because every organization has a different culture and is experiencing things differently, and every individual is experiencing things differently. So so where is the culture now? So the first thing I do, Kimberly, is I start with, a quick 2x2, like how do we diagnose, where are we?
Right.
So clearly most organizations are past the shock stage where we all were in the spring, and most organizations are not at the thriving, right, jamming on all cylinder stage. So there's two stages that most organizations are in. The first stage that comes after that shock stage, think about how we all feel after a crisis emergency, right? Where we're firing on all cylinders to meet the demand of the day, but then we're exhausted, right?
Yep.
We're tired. We're still feeling the pain of how things were. So that's where some cultures are now. People are putting in the minimum, but they're still feeling out of control. Workflows are still unsettled, right? Have we moved on, and are we recovering? Because we've had some breakthroughs, we're experimenting, we're trying new things, and things are starting to work. So we're not recovered while we're recovering.
Right.
So most cultures are either struggling or recovering. So if you take just those two, the gaining trust takes a different form, you know, in either of those. And the struggling, there's going to be a whole lot much more of emotional empathy, right? Of just being there and bringing that humanity. When people are in recovery, you know, it's going to be much more what we like to call empathy as cognitive empathy, which is understanding people's point of view, right? What are the facts? What are their opinions? What, you know, what's their perspective? What's their frame of reference that they're coming from? So kind of meeting people where they're at, you know, based on where they are in those two stages will help to establish trust, because it's not what people, you know, say, it's what they want and what they need.
Right.
You know, that helps to establish trust. So it's being credible about what we know, what we don't know, and what we can and can't say, and how we can find out. You know, and, you know, being honest, but not too honest about what we're going through, right? I mean, we can say, yeah, you know, I'm feeling it too, but nobody wants to hear from a leader that, you know, their kids are, you know, on video games and not doing, you know, nobody, you know, the employees don't care as much.
No, they need to know you've got it. You're in charge. You've got it. You're strong. You can get through this. Exactly. You know, I don't need to be something, right?
But that's also going to vary, right? I mean, some leaders and employees do have that kind of relationship. But at the end of the day, the employee is going to want their needs to be attended to and their views listened to first. And then they may or may not have the space. In struggling, they won't have the space to hear the leader's story. In recovering, though, they very well might. And that might actually be some good connection for the two.
Yes, excellent. So kind of in another tangent to that. So when talking about authenticity, we don't want to be overly authentic as a leader and really share our, you know, maybe insecurities or uncertainty as to what's going to happen, because we want to communicate some kind of answer, some kind of knowing, because if the employee doesn't have an answer, guess what? They make up the worst one, right? So as a leader, you kind of have to stay strong. But I'm also a proponent of self as coach, as a leader. And, you know, we're also human, right? And we do have those insecurities or those fears. And so how are you coaching your leaders and managers? Obviously not showing that to their employees, but from a self-care perspective, what is your guidance to them about managing that piece of it? Because if they don't take care of it, it will proliferate, right? It will affect. So that has to be managed somehow in order for them to command that leadership that is necessary for that safety that the employees are looking for. So how would you address that?
Sure. Well, there's a lot of advice out there about self-care. So I'll just hit on a couple of important points. One is the role of leader is very lonesome.
Right.
People tend to not be transparent with leaders, and they don't want to hear leaders' struggles. So where do you go? Do you need to be strong like that at home too? Maybe home is not the place where you can be vulnerable. Maybe it is. I don't know. Do you have peers? Do you have friends? Do you have a professional community? Do you have alums from, you know, whether it's high school or, you know, wherever? So, and you don't need a lot.
Right.
Sometimes you only need one person, right, with whom you can be vulnerable and you can vent. Other people don't want to do this interpersonally, Kimberly. Some people just want to go for a run and listen, to some hip hop while they're going for a run in the park. And some people prefer to journal. Some people prefer to meditate and do yoga or just do a heavy duty workout.
Yeah.
In some way, shape, or form. So it would be find your way, right? So, here's a list of different ways. Find your way. So, because what is needed from the role of leader is to show up, de-escalated.
Right.
It doesn't mean that you're not feeling it in some ways, but it's dialed down.
Correct.
Right. So, and then you can shift the conversation to a more productive place. And I call that the 3 Ps. So it's purpose, processes, and people. So do you all remember Simon Sinek's How Great Leaders Inspire Action, his Power of Why? Yes. So if you're not familiar with it, it's a 7-minute video. You can go on YouTube and watch it. So he basically says, don't focus on the what, focus on the why, the purpose, the meaning, the mission, which is what we all, that's part of our wish list as employees. So, and it's meaningful and it's regrounding. It helps us to regain and get some real footing on identity, on who we're serving, what we're serving them with our products and services, getting our pride back and getting a sense of what our impact is in whichever way, shape, or form. And that also then informs, so we go from purpose to process. So what is the future of work at your organization? How will the work change and how will the workforce change? What work needs to get done and how will it get done? So engage people in doing a workflow audit, just acknowledging that things are, messy and messier these days, right? Because it's not the way it used to be when we were all in offices. So get people to be part of the solution and engage. So to identify the degree of alignment between our goals, our roles, our operating processes, and the talents and skills that people need, right, to get the work done. So, and that can then inform team goals and clarity for individuals, et cetera. And so after you do purpose and process, then we get to people. And these are all interrelated, right? Not sequential. But how are interpersonal relations in your culture and then within teams, right? And can we as leaders treat employees like we treat customers, with respect and fairness? And as you alluded to, in this kind of remote world, it's harder to do that. And yet it's even more critical because people are craving it more, right? So, Kimberly, you and I've talked about this before. There's lots of discussion out there about the distinction between empathy and sympathy.
Right.
And there's a confusion about confusing empathy for sympathy. Sympathy is, when my dog died a few months ago, I got lots and lots of contact from people saying how sad they were for me. He was 17 and he was a big part of my life. Okay. So that's sympathy, right? I feel you're sad for your sadness. Empathy is not sympathy. Empathy is I see and understand, your thoughts, your feelings, your point of view, and I'm willing to help you out. Right? But I'm not in that place, right? If someone doesn't have children, they can't empathize with what people with small kids are going through. They can't sympathize it, but they can empathize with it and lend a helping hand, right? So that's the good thing, is that we don't have to be, feeling what other people are not feeling, right? In order to empathize. That also helps to establish the trust. So purpose, process, people. Really important to focus on those three elements.
Exactly. Yes. I'm currently, we'll be planning on doing a talk on the isolation epidemic. And really, it's interesting enough, it's affecting our millennials, which are really comprising the majority of the workforce and soon to be 75% of the workforce. Yes. And, studies show they're finding their community on social media, like a Facebook community, a LinkedIn community, an Instagram, Snapchat, whatever. And, kind of going back to your purpose, within an organization, and I'm really pushing for the workplace to become the new community place and offering those things above and beyond just, a place to work, a career, a job, but really venues for them to collaborate on their own career growth, right? We just talked about, or collaborate on various projects, or collaborating and doing a charity mission for the company that has a higher vision that they feel a purpose to, right? That they feel they're showing up at work for something bigger than themselves. And I think that whole purpose thing is really, really, really important, in addition to the process piece. And of course, people are the highest part of that whole thing. If we don't value the people, not just the position, but the people in the position, it's really not going to be, our success is going to be extremely limited because our people will not be very committed, right? So
yeah. So within those three, there's a whole lot more. But at the end of the day, look, companies are going back to doing layoffs these days.
I know.
Right? We're seeing that. For goodness sakes, at the airline industry.
I know.
So there are some tough things, and it doesn't mean that we can still be fair and respectful and empathetic and humane, right? And all of those things, right, toward people. So, and then there's the people who have survivor guilt, right? Who are remaining
Right.
behind, so how do we help them, right, to go through that, that grieving process where they see their colleagues and then they're getting increased workload, right? Because those positions, of course, are not being filled. So there's more workload per person, and how are they navigating
Right.
that?
Yep.
So, as I started this talk with you, Kimberly, leading in these uncharted waters are not for the faint of heart.
Right.
It is a tough job, and it can be a lonely job, and I know how stressful and demanding it can be. Adaptability is key. So there's also a lot of research out there about how the adaptability quotient, or AQ, is just as important as EQ, or emotional quotient, or emotional intelligence in dealing with people. So the being able to pivot or adjust or transform, regardless of whether it's an adjacent or a complete change, right, in the business, some sort of mutations are happening, within organizations, and we're still morphing, right? We're still in process. So, it doesn't have to be as stressful and as demanding as it has to be. The trick is to keep going one foot in front of the other, to persevere, because we know that we're going to come out of the other end,
Exactly.
or, societies go through rough times, and we just haven't seen one this severe in a long time, but we will get through it.
We will. We definitely will. We definitely will. I love your AQ comment. It's as leaders, they don't just need IQ anymore, because your technical skills are those are the last things you really need anymore. You really need the EQ, the AQ, and I also like to throw in there the CQ, the connection quotient, the ability
Yeah.
to really relate and empathize and build a trusting environment. So, is there anything else that you'd like to leave for our audience today before we close it out for today's show?
Sure. So I also know, Kimberly, that it's not the same for every leader. So,
Right.
we have talked in these few minutes in some generalities, but it's important for every leader to know that they're not alone,
Right.
they're not crazy, and they're not incompetent. No one can do this alone.
Nope.
Everybody, needs some help, and everybody needs, to kind of have a community, whether it's a community of one other person or group, to help navigate through this.
No, exactly. I always like to think about, even the great pros of the world, when Tiger Woods, at the peak of his golf career, or even Serena Williams, the peak of her tennis career, and she's still going. They all have coaches. They all have coaches to help them see their blind spots, right? To egg them on and push them when they can't go any further, or just to kind of give them some peace of mind and a different way of looking at things, right? And I think, having somebody in your corner, we all could use somebody in our corner, right? And being a leader is no different. And as you repeatedly said, it's a difficult job right now. It's with all this profound volatility you mentioned in opening up. It's a tough job, and having someone to kind of bounce ideas off of, as a lonely leader, is certainly advantageous, right? So,
and I know, Kimberly, when I was in the role of leader and executive, which I had multiple times over the years in my career, so I've been there sitting in the leadership role with financial responsibility, employee responsibility, but budget responsibility, etc. So I know how it feels, to be kind of getting that pressure from all, as have you. You've been an
right.
executive in publicly traded companies too. So, having been in that seat, and not just having been a consultant and coach all these years, means that it's also easier to be able to see things from that executive's point of view.
Yeah, you've got the empathy, just like myself, because we've been in those shoes, right? We totally can relate to the experiences, and I think that provides almost, I don't say more authentic, but it does create a trust, because I think people can tell when you've been in their shoes. They can feel that empathy, because you can share that emotion quite clearly, and that comes across in a very true and connecting way, right? So
absolutely, yeah.
Well, Sue, I'd like to thank you so much for being on our show today. I think you've created some great tips for our audience around leading and managing in this unfortunately stage of flux that we're in, and hopefully it's not going to go on too much longer, but I think you provided some great resources for our audience. If anybody would like to get a hold of Sue, please find her on her website at www.nclineleadership.com. I'll also post that in the video notes for you to be able to get a hold of her email, and her phone number. So thanks everybody today for joining us on the Power of Connection and Biz show. Again, I'm your host, Kimberly Lane.